Introduce you to a local artist who left his mark all over the city, using creativity to help local communities while taking on the responsibility of sharing Black history.
I was born here in Washington, D.C., but I grew up in Nigeria. That's where my parents are from. I've always been drawing as a kid, picking different kinds of interest in comic books and coloring books and things like that. My name is Aniakan Udofia, and I'm a painter and illustrator here in Washington, D.C. I grew up around in the villages. There's a lot of color and there's a lot of vibrance. With my murals here, the ones that I've done here in DC, especially the one here that we're standing in front of at Ben's Chili Bowl, I bring that vibrancy and color to it based on my upbringing in Nigeria.
When we were introduced to the artist, we were so terribly impressed with him and his work. People came from all over just to see the mural.
There was a lot of mixed feelings, like there was excitement, there was fear, there was, everything.
If you make that wall, you have done something, whether you impacted one or the universe. From President Obama to, Dave Chappelle to Dick Gregory.
I've always known about Ben's Chili Bowl. Telling the story of Black history, especially here in America, is a huge responsibility. It's a huge mantle to bear. In the beginning, it used to be intimidating, the process of taking a small concept from a very small medium to, say, a 40 or 60-foot wall. I'm very terrified of heights. One of the amazing things about this mural here is we took so long to come up with the composition. Not in a bad way, but it was just, it's that important. By the time we came up with the idea, it was just 7 days left. It took 7 days to paint 16 people on the mural, and usually I would estimate a month. I'm very grateful to Ben's Chili Bowl, to DC as a whole, being that for my career, I'm able to do something historical at a historical site. The journey is still continuing. Who knows what I'll do next?
I want people to be aware of the fact that people of color are good people. I want them to understand their worth.
Hi, I'm Cheryl Henderson, Certified American Sign Language Interpreter.
Hello, I'm Daniel Katz Hernandez, and this is my mural, Water Balloons Dancing. Often when I was on the metro, I would get tired or sleepy, as people do. So I watched what was going on around me in the train and started sketching it. And I would post some of my sketches on Instagram and other social media, and I got a lot of positive response. For a very long time, I've felt an affinity and an impact tied to civil rights movements. We look at events on the news, we look at the suffering that many people has gone through, and how people choose not to focus on the negative, but instead focus on positive experiences, focus on what people have to contribute and bring. And keeping that in mind, I wanted to share that. I wanted to share some good news. I have named each of these characters. Of course, B had to be someone who was strong, and even as someone threw balloons at them, they were able to defend them easily, and that was Barack. And then the middle character is a little bit more impulsive and mischievous. The L, that's Lewis, for Louis Armstrong. And then the next one has direct eye contact and is also looking forward into the future, and Martin Luther King had a dream as he looked forward into the future. Empathy, that always draws me. Helping people to understand the world, that's important. Seeing a message in the art and in visuals that are produced. And for people from outside of the community of people of color, for them to see this and think about the fact that These are people just like me, people who may be underserved or marginalized. They're people just like I am, and maybe foster some of that unity. Communication barriers don't need to exist, that we can find a way to be one. I hoped that after this was finished, people would come in and look at the faces and their smiles, and then they would also smile. I'm really grateful for the opportunity.
This past year has been tough on so many, and one artist wants to send a message of hope and education during the COVID-19 pandemic. Fox 5 DC recently spoke with singer and songwriter G.P. Jackson about his latest work, Letter to a Nation.
Our next guest is a graduate from DeMatha Catholic High School in Hyattsville, Maryland, and he's using his gift as a singer and songwriter to inspire change. Take a look.
You say no, it can't be me. Turn around and infect your family. Our arrogance is delirious. We gotta take it serious. When we all believe one day we'll all be free.
G.P. Jackson's new video is called Letter to a Nation, and he joins me now to tell us more about the music video and how we can enact change in our own communities. Good morning to you, G.P. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me.
I was looking at your video on YouTube, and I was rewatching it this morning, and it's so inspiring. Before we get into that, though, I want to know, how long have you been singing? What are your musical roots? What's the background here?
Yeah, so I've been singing for more than 20 years. As you mentioned, started at DeMatha Catholic High School. Then I got a scholarship to go to Morgan State University, where I joined the illustrious Morgan State University Choir. And I had the pleasure of singing under the late Dr. Nathan Carter, traveling around the world. And as you can see, it's very cold out here, so excuse me. But the opportunities have been incredible to sing around the world, the likes of Soulful Symphony that's been known around the Washington, D.C. area, and others. So I've had the privilege, and this is just my latest iteration.
And I believe that's the MLK monument behind you, right? So I guess it's fitting that we're talking to you from there.
Sure. Yes, yes. The beauty of the moment with the video was really creating an opportunity for sanctuary. So as we think about watching the video, think about all of the pain and the grief and the frustration dealing with COVID, dealing with the social unrest, but then having this opportunity for hope and healing, where we're trying to figure out how we get to this place of sanctuary so we can get to a place called better. Yeah. And the question around what is my letter really is the theme of the song that others can take into their own communities.
You know, GP, you said something that was really striking to me. You said, I made the video to give people permission to mourn those we have lost and be reassured that there is hope if we work together. But permission to mourn those we have lost. That's so powerful.
Yeah. So with COVID, as you know, and you can see in the amazing memorial that was shot in front of the RFK Stadium, there had not yet been during 2020 opportunities for us to mourn as a society, think about those that we've lost and the gravity of it. And so to be able to be at that spot in RFK, right outside of RFK Stadium, to show just the enormity of the loss that was happening, I think was an opportunity for folks to really take a moment to say, wow, this is where we've been and where do we go from here?
Yeah, it seems like we're so busy trying to survive, right, this last year, that oftentimes we forget to give ourselves permission to feel the emotions that we rightfully are feeling.
Absolutely.
What I love about what you're doing is that there's also an educational component to this. You want to bring this into the classrooms. Explain what that means.
Yeah. No, so for the educational component, Letter to a Nation education, we're actually focused on bringing a comprehensive curriculum led by my colleague and friend, Dr. Rhonda Hilton, to bring the education component of what does your letter to a nation look like. So thinking about civic engagement, thinking about racial equity, thinking about social justice, and how we create a comprehensive and multidisciplinary education that can be utilized where students can take this piece and create their own letter, to create their own moment, to create their own change in their communities.
I love that, because everybody has really their own letter, right? It's unique to the person. I don't mean to put you on the spot here, but since you're our Mr. Inspirational person for today, any inspiring words that you can pass along in addition to what you've already said?
Absolutely. So to anyone who's watching and thinking to themselves, how do I utilize my gift? How do I change my circumstances? This is an opportunity to say, get creative, think deep, look deep, and you'll never, never disappoint yourself when you trust in yourself.
Think deep, look deep. Love that. Where can people find your music?
People can find it on Amazon, on iTunes. Absolutely, you can watch the video on YouTube, shot by the incredible folks at Make a Scene Media, Taylor Kempia and Heather Hunt. Thank you so much. You can watch the video there, and please continue to share, and please continue to get well. Let's educate, let's motivate, and let's vaccinate, folks.
You know, GP, it's people like you that have helped the rest of us get through what has been a very difficult time over the last year. So we appreciate what you're doing. Thank you so much for talking to us this morning.
There are things that corporations can do to educate, inform, and empower their employees. Michaela Perino with Fox 11 Los Angeles recently spoke with an expert on how people can celebrate Black History Month at work.
February is a great time for us to focus, promote, and highlight the profound contributions of Black Americans. But how do we do that in our workplaces? Friend to the show, Joy Altamari, is here with some great ideas to re-energize and invigorate your organization during this month. And in fact, you've actually been doing that in your own org, so it's kind of great real-time application. How are you, my dear?
That's right. I'm great. How are you?
So good. I think this is something that a lot of companies have been trying to figure out as the national conversation around inclusion, equity, and diversity increases. And here we are in Black History Month. What can employers and organizations do to make it not just a thing that's on the calendar and somebody puts a sad poster up in the hallway?
I know. I think that the thing that we can do that we have to consider is that the virtual aspect of working, a lot of Americans are still working virtually, lends itself to really including everyone in your organization. One of the things I also want to remind people is that this month is typically when Black history or Black museums, African-American museums really see the most visitors they see throughout the year. And so tapping into something that already exists, like organizations that have come together to curate experiences around Black history, Black experiences, African Americans' contribution to American history, as you said, is a great way to do it. And you don't have to actually do a lot of work. A lot of these are already free.
Let them do the work for you.
Let them work for you. You can tap into Google Arts and Culture. They actually curated different experiences by leveraging 80 different African American museums across the country.
So great.
You can basically go online, create like a month long, or now we have about 2.5 more weeks, so 2.5 more weeks long of activities, and then send them out to your organization. Put them in your HR bulletin, put them on your intranet, have people sign in. They're free, and they can do it at their leisure, and they can learn more about the civil rights movement or Frederick Douglass. These are amazing things.
Art museums, Pan-African film festivals, which there's one coming up in Los Angeles very shortly. Okay, so managers specifically, you were talking about on the big company level. Let's drill down to managers where they're executing the day-to-day. What can they be doing to sort of work with their teams on this?
Yeah, I think the word that you just said, teams, is the most important. Think of how you want to bring your teams together. So a lot of us, I know I did, before the holidays, I had a team Zoom. It was the one time we got together where we weren't talking about work. So think about how you can do that this month. And then again, there's so many resources that are free. We actually just did one with, it was hosted by One Resource. They're an organization that came together to basically bridge Black culture and pop culture. And they did it in a fun way, as kind of like an homage to Alex Trebek. They did Black Jeopardy. And it was so fun. And I think one of the things you said earlier is that we want to make sure this is an inviting, engaging conversation around Black history for everyone. And who doesn't love Jeopardy? So we had our entire team, 35 people on a Zoom. I sent them some things to make them be more expressive at home, to their home, so that everyone had their favorite cocktail. And we enjoyed Black Jeopardy and really educated ourselves around Black American history.
Joe, you just planted a seed in my head. I think we're going to have to create some sort of Zoom activity for the Good Day LA squad for sure. Okay, as an employee, you also have agency. You can do things. You have a way of sharing with your fellow coworkers about Black History Month.
Yes, and I think a lot of organizations have what's called affinity groups. These are groups that actually have a specific topic that they focus on. So a lot of companies have like African American women, a females organization or affinity group around that. So if you're in that group, use this as an opportunity to extend your reach beyond just your affinity group. One of the things I love the most is when you can make, again, you can embrace the virtual nature of where we're working. You can introduce Black history in different ways. A company called Obsidian Concept House, they actually created, they used Black history and they worked with 25 architects and designers to create this virtual house around concepts that were drawn from Black history. It's a really, really great way for people to say, I love art and design, but it's a way for you to understand how Black Americans have contributed to the fabric of this country through art and design.
You know what's really remarkable too is, I mean, we keep pointing to these silver linings that the pandemic has provided. We have more access to things because we can do them virtually. You can kind of dip into places that you wouldn't be able to travel to as a group, as a company, as a team. Joy, it's always a joy to speak with you. No pun even necessary there, because it is the darn truth. Thanks so much for being here to help us commemorate this and seeing how to do it in the workplace in an effective and powerful manner. Good to see you. You take care and stay safe, okay?
Good to you too. Take care.
All right.
Coming up after the break, we'll hear from a couple of people who are involved in a recently released film diving into the history of the Black Panthers and the Civil Rights Movement. We'll be right back. movie released this month is highlighting a pivotal story that took place during the civil rights movement. Judas and the Black Messiah tells the story of Fred Hampton, the chairman of the Illinois chapter of the Black Panthers in the late 1960s in Chicago. Here we have a few interviews to bring you surrounding the dramatic story. Let's get into it from our sister station, Fox 32 from Chicago.
I'm Jake Hamilton. The buzzed about new drama Judas and the Black Messiah tells the true story of the life and death of Illinois Black Panther Party Chairman Fred Hampton. And while it may be a story familiar to many of us here in Chicago, for one man, it hits a little closer to home because Fred was his father. I spoke with Fred Hampton Jr. about the new film and his father's legacy more than 50 years after his death.
Black Panther Party was connected to the people, and that's the major ingredient. We talk about struggle. We distinguish heroes from revolutionary. Chairman Fred was a revolutionary. This is a representative of an organization that turned the communities into classrooms to really grasp what a revolutionary is. Chairman Fred was willing and subsequently paid the ultimate price to fight for self-determination. He was assassinated, so even in physical death, the legacy of Chairman Fred still lives.
On December 4th, 1969, Fred Hampton, the chairman of the Illinois Black Panther Party, was shot twice in the head during a raid orchestrated by the FBI and carried out by the Chicago Police Department. He was 21 years old. And now the story of his rise to prominence and his death are being chronicled in the buzzed about new film, Judas and the Black Messiah.
Deputy Chairman Fred Hampton of the Illinois Black Panther Party.
The only people that don't want you to have any guns are people that intend to use guns on you.
What is the thing that you most love hearing about him from people who met him and who knew him?
His love for the people. His love for the people. And again, I don't want to sound cliches, but to a committed, charismatic, courageous representative that weighed it theory and practice, that just didn't talk about it.
Hampton's son, Fred Hampton Jr., never met his father. His mother was pregnant at the time Hampton was killed. But he's gone on to follow in his father's footsteps as the president and chairman of the Prisoners of Conscience Committee and the Black Panther Party Cubs. Now that you are chairman, what is it that you try to emulate today in that position that you learned from the stories of your father?
Fight on our own terms. That was self-determination. I can't say that enough. We say the Black Panther Party Cubs, in regards to the Black Panther Party, is a tough act to follow. However, we attempt to not walk in their footsteps, but their Panther Paul steps.
I pledge allegiance to my black people. I pledge to develop my mind and body to the greatest extent possible.
But for Hampton Jr., his father is more than just a character in a movie or a page in the history books. He was a man who changed the communities around him. You know, a lot of people are going to be introduced to who Fred Hampton was just by nature of watching this movie. But what is something outside of the 2 hours of this movie that you want to make sure that people know about who he was?
I don't know how much time we have, but can I minimize that this is an organization that doing the first free breakfast program, free busing programs, the prisons, free clothing programs, service to the people, and not in the way of charity, but for the people themselves to get involved in their struggle for self-determination. Many of the programs that Chairman Fred and Black Panther Party had, the people subsequently took these programs on. So if nothing else, the people need to recognize that we are our own liberators. And the Black Panther Party was connected to the people, and that's the major ingredient. We talk about struggle. We distinguish heroes from revolutionary. Chairman Fred was a revolutionary.
Such a powerful interview. Thank you to Fox 32 for that. Now, Fred Hampton's story has had an impact on millions of people, including the actor who portrays Hampton in the film. Elise Edie from Fox 5 Atlanta sat down with the lead of the film, Daniel Kaluuya. Here's that conversation.
The Black Panthers are the single greatest threat to our national security. Our counterintelligence program must prevent the rise of a Black Messiah.
How did you prepare for this role?
Yeah, I wasn't talking about Chairman Fred, but I was talking about the civil rights movement within America during that time. So I had an understanding in that sense, and then I knew about the Black Panther Party by my late teens, early 20s. I started arriving to those ideas, those philosophies. And then, and I'd hear about Chairman Fred from here and there around. And then, then I came to this, and I read the script, and I was like, wow, I didn't realize how much of a brilliant mind and a brilliant heart he had. And it was a tall mountain to begin to climb.
Nothing else mean a damn thing. Imagine what we could accomplish together.
Did you find yourself at times just kind of getting, wrapped up in the message a little bit and just, really understanding what it was that Chairman Fred was going after?
I think there's one thing reading it, there's one thing learning it, there's another thing saying it out loud to people that are listening. And so, because they're listening and their registration of it allows you to kind of listen to it and kind of go. And for me, it was just like when you're in the zone and you're doing it, it's on you to kind of let the words guide me in how to say them. And then so it really certain lines are really kind of like, wow, like this is deeply profound when you marry the emotion and the energy that he was that I was wrestling.
So we had you on one hand, and on the other hand, we had Lakeith Stanfield as William O'Neill. So what was it like, you two being, at least in the movie, when it came down to it, polar opposites and what you were actually after, working side by side?
Close to him.
I think we're both in service of Chairman Fred. I think Bill O'Neill is, in order to show who Chairman Fred Hampton is, you have to show who he isn't, and that's Bill O'Neill. And he was a way to kind of like show that even someone with that much apathy can, he was able to ignite in them, because I think 3/4 in, O'Neill really believed in what Chairman Fred said, and that's a huge evolution to a man that was indifferent, so it was great to work with Lakeith again. He's such a brilliant artist, and he's a generational talent.
It's not a question of violence or non-violence. It's a question of resistance to fascism or non-existence within fascism.
Would you say that this movie is coming out at a time when the message and everything behind it is still, very much relevant?
Yeah, I mean, you see it in the last year in the response and reaction to the murders of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. There's a lot of people feeling a lot of things, and I remember when that happened, I spoke to Shaka the King, the incredible director, and a lot of the cast, and go, wow, we've just made a film that shows Chairman Fred and the Black Panther Party articulating what a lot of people are feeling right now, and it's very important. That stuff is invaluable, to kind of really be aware of what it is you're feeling so that you can actually do something about it. But also, not only did they articulate it, they did something about it. They set up strategies in order to help themselves to combat with the oppression of the establishment.
Anywhere there's people, there's power.
Well, our thanks to Warner Brothers for help coordinating that interview. Judas and the Black Messiah is now playing in theaters and available to stream on HBO Max.
Thank you to Fox 32 and Fox 5 in Atlanta for those interviews. And that's what we do here on News Now from Fox. We are powered by Fox stations from across the country. So within the next half hour, we'll hear a couple more interviews from artists and creators about projects that have just been released. We'll be right back. All right, we're going to head from those who are in the movies to the people who actually create them. Our friends at Fox Soul have put together a really inspiring series called The Screening Room, hosted by none other than Vivica A. Fox. She speaks with Black content creators about the things that shape their lives and the projects that they're currently working on. So we want to bring you all a few of those conversations from this week's episode.
Welcome to Fox Soul Screening Room. How did your grandparents motivate you to become a storyteller?
Absolutely. So I grew up in South Carolina in like
the rural South. So with that, like storytelling was just a part of our culture. And I grew up with my grandmother and my grandfather, and they would just tell me all the different stories of the things that they had endured back in the day, living in South Carolina in like the 40s, 50s, and 60s. And so just growing up listening to those type of stories, I think that is what influenced me to become a storyteller, because I saw the importance of like keeping our stories within our families and sharing our stories outside of like to the nation, and how important that is to do that. So I would like to say that I think that's what it was, and it just kind of sparked a fire in me. And from there, I kept on going, kept on writing, and here today.
Would you consider yourself and your grandparents, who, you know, gave you all of these wonderful stories of their experiences, to be activists?
So that's a really good question. If you were to ask my grandmother and my grandfather, they would straight up tell you that they're not activists. Even with the stories of my grandmother, like teaching the elders how to read and write so that they can vote, and you know, everything that my grandfather did as far as being a black caddy and trying to break into becoming a golfer when they weren't allowed to golf. They would tell you that they're not activists. And you know, for me, I wouldn't take on that title either, because I just don't want to diminish the work that activists are doing. But I definitely, you know, believe in the cause. I definitely go out and march. I definitely, you know, support the cause in any way I possibly can. Like my day job is I'm the branch chief of the Office of Civil Rights, Diversity, and Inclusion for a federal agency. So, you know, everyone has their way of making everyone has their way of doing whatever they need to do towards the movement. And we may not want to take on the title as activists, but we're doing the work, and I think that's important.
Okay, well, tell us about your film, Rivermint.
Yeah, so Rivermint was born just out of how I was feeling. This was like back in 2015. Just the year before, in 2014, we had experienced Michael Brown's shooting death. And so in 2015, I was gearing up to write my thesis for film school. And I just couldn't stand everything that was going on in the world. And so what ended up happening, it was actually born through a conversation that I had with my grandmother. Like I said, like I listened to their stories. My parents and my grandparents, they took me to my first march to get the Confederate flag off of the Capitol in South Carolina, and just having that instilled in me, and like just knowing the importance of knowing yourself and knowing your history. I was always just like a fighter in that way. And I was living in DC at the time, and I just remember calling my grandmother saying like, "Grandma, I'm about to go march. I'm about to go march." And I could hear the fear in her voice when she said, "You know, we did those things back then, hoping that your generation wouldn't have to." And it sparked something in me, because here this woman was, who I heard all of the wonderful things she did back in her day, and all the wonderful things her husband did back in his day. And here she is, well, she's afraid for her granddaughter, and she can't believe that we were basically fighting for the things that she was fighting for back then. And so that's what kind of birthed Rivermint. I really wanted to, instead of doing like a documentary piece, I wanted to explore that concept in a narrative form, because people relate more to narrative. And what I really wanted to do is show how women have always been in the forefront of movements, and they're the forgotten ones, the Ella Bakers, the Fannie Lou Hammers. I really wanted to show that dynamic and use Black women. So from there, you actually had
a scene where she confronted her, and she said that we did it so y'all didn't have to, correct?
Absolutely. Yes,
I
ma'am.
loved
yes, ma'am.
that scene.
So me and my grandmother argument didn't go like that, but
but when you told that story, I was like, oh, that's where she got that scene from. Because when I saw that scene, I was like, wow, it was so deep that here we are in 2021, and history has a way of repeating itself, correct?
Absolutely, it does. Yeah. And our goal for our generation is, we don't, even though we know the youth inherit the movement and we're supposed to carry the torch, our hope is that our grandchildren aren't fighting for the same, like fight for something new. Hopefully y'all aren't fighting for the same things we're fighting for right now. So, you know, we're going to pick the torch up and we're going to keep it moving, but hopefully there is some change that occurs with the things that we're doing today.
I was about to compliment you and say, you know, I believe that you have a wonderful spirit and a wonderful future. You also created a web series called Quarter Century.
Oh, goodness.
Tell us about Quarter Century, girlfriend. Y'all talk about folks trying to be grown.
You went into the vault.
Yes, we did. Yes, we went your fault, girlfriend. So what have you figured out about being grown?
So I haven't figured out nothing, that we all just in here winging it. That's exactly what came about that. Quarter Century was my very first film production. I made that, it was right after Awkward Black Girl had hit in 2011. And you know, that kind of instilled something in all us indie filmmakers. We were like, we could do this, we could do this. Mm-hmm. So in 2012, I was like, I'm gonna make a web series. I don't like where I am. I was like 22 or 23 at the time. And I was like, I was working customer support. I was just not happy. And I was experiencing my quarter life crisis. And I was like, I'm gonna just put this on paper. I'm gonna get my friends together and we're gonna make a web series. We don't know what we're doing, but we're gonna do it. And, you know, 200,000 collective views later, Quarter Century was born. And that actually helped me get into film school. So it's hard for me to watch Quarter Century now because, you know,
because you've advanced, right?
Humble beginning. Humble beginnings.
Listen, sweetheart, everybody's got to start somewhere. And I'm going to tell you, myself and our producers, we love your energy. What kind of storyteller do you consider yourself?
Oh my goodness. I like to consider myself an authentic storyteller. I like to tell stories from the South. Like I'm from South Carolina. And when you get stories from the South, of course you highlight the Atlantas and the Houstons, but I don't think you really get those stories from like South Carolina, Mississippi, Alabama. So that's the type of storyteller I am. And I'm always about putting Black women and women of color and giving them those lead roles. So those are the type of stories I like to tell.
You all about girl power? You all about girl power? I love that. So tell us, what's the biggest takeaway that you want our viewers to leave with after seeing your film Rivermint?
The biggest takeaway is that we still have work to do. And though, you know, those who did the civil rights movement may have had their way of doing things, and those who are doing Black Lives Matter, we have our way of doing things. But at the end of the day, we need each other in this entire fight because we still have a long ways to go. Those who are in the civil rights movement, the movements of the past, they have the blueprint. We're carrying the torch. Let's just do this together. Let's rock this together so that our children, our children's children, our children's children's children won't be fighting for these things in the future.
Amen, my sister. So tell us, after Rivermint, what's next for you?
So I have a couple of projects that I'm slated. Right now, I'm currently crowdfunding for a series pilot called Robin Hood. And Robin Hood is such a fun film. It's a horror comedy. So shout out to the horror comedies out there. And basically, it takes the traditional story of Robin Hood, mixes it with a menacing succubus, and ties it to an inside joke within Black culture of us women stealing men's hoodies. And it's such a fun series pilot. We're trying to crowdfund it right now. We have a crowdfunding going on for $15,000. So please donate. Okay. Another project that I have is I just completed a documentary for a museum in DC called the Phillips Collection. They're celebrating their centennial, and so I did a documentary on the Great Migration where I got to interview two women who migrated in the 1950s from the South to the North. Their stories are so phenomenal. And then last but not least, I'm currently in the pitching phase for my feature film that I'm hoping to direct. It's called Off Brands, and it is a Black coming of age story set in 2004. So it's so much fun, and I'm just hoping I get a chance to actually show that to the world.
Well, Miss Shayla, I'm talking about every day I'm hustling. Miss Shayla is all about the hustle, y'all. So you know what? We're so proud of you, and we absolutely just wish you so much of the best with Rivermint and your beautiful future. Keep fighting, my sister. Keep looking forward. You are just a jewel. You really are. So your girl Vivica Fox wishes you the best, okay?
We'll have one more conversation for you this evening with actor and director Elvis Nolasco coming up right after the break. You don't want to miss it. Welcome back. The second screening room interview that we're bringing you tonight is with well-known actor Elvis Nolasco. They talked about his new project, Time to Surrender, the origins of his name, and of course, his relationship with Spike Lee.
Welcome to the screening room, Elvis. Now, I want to take a moment. Let's talk about your name. Who in your family was a big Elvis fan?
That's a good question. It's a very, very long story.
Well, give me the condensed version, brother.
Okay. I was named by a relative in my family, who was my mom's cousin. And the name came about because I was born in a Metropolitan Hospital with a respiratory infection. And I was baptized twice. I wasn't going to make it. And I happened to be born in the year of Elvis Presley's comeback year. Prior to this cap, you'll do the research what year that was. And this kid somehow didn't die.
Was that 71?
68.
68. Okay, 3 years old.
Yeah.
But I got close, though, didn't I?
So the story is I made a comeback like the King had in that year, and there was a lot of noise with Elvis Presley coming back after he had gone to the military in his career. It just took a major downfall. But he went on the Ed Sullivan Show at the end of 1968 with the black leather outfit, and his comeback came about at that time. And my relative felt that my mom should name me Elvis because.
Wow, isn't that an amazing? That's an amazing connection that that he went to the military, and your film deals with a veteran that's dealing with, issues, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. It's just the outcome was a lot different from Elvis and Dino.
Yeah.
The outcome was different. This young man who was dealing with PTSD and who is dealing with a backlog, a system that he feels neglected him. And it's a common theme, and it's not one that I wasn't privy or aware of, even though my younger brother served 2 tours, one in Afghanistan and one in Iraq. But the story came about because in 2014, I was watching news and I could hear President Obama talking a lot about the military and talking about a lot about the soldiers. And it was just a common repetitive theme. And what Obama wanted to do for the veterans. And it was this news and this awareness that I was not aware of the backlog in the system and how neglected a lot of our veterans are.
Yes, absolutely. Now I want to move forward a little bit. You've got a special relationship with Spike Lee. Tell us about that.
That relationship started some years ago. It's interesting what you put out in the universe. Because I was watching Mo Better Blues when I was studying in Philadelphia. I was studying dramatic arts at Freedom Theater School of Performing Arts in Philly. And this was in the early 90s. And I said to myself, you know what, I'm going to go and check out this movie I had already seen, Do the Right Thing. And I started just following Spike Lee's work early on. So I went to see Mo Better Blues. And I remember I was with my daughter's mom. It was a date. And Spike came out on the screen. And I turned around, I turned to the side, and I said to my daughter's mother, you know that guy right there? I'm going to work with that guy one day.
I know that's right.
And fast forward.
Because people, that's positive projection, on your part, because people don't get that. It's like, you set that in your universe that you like, one day I'm going to work with that brother. And as a matter of fact, I hear that Spike Lee is the executive producer of your film.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. It's been a long relationship since we first started working in 1994, excuse me, in Clockers with Mekhi Phifer and Delroy Lindo and a host of other actors at that time, 1994. So it's been a collaboration throughout the years of me working in front of the camera, Spike directing, me watching, me getting the pointers. And just learning a lot from Spike. And Spike is very interesting, loving, caring, and nurturing folk. But he's also one of these people that every time I would talk to him about an idea, he would just be like, gotta do it, man, gotta do it.
Can I tell you, that's like the New Yorker in him. Like, let's make it happen, right?
Come on, let's make it happen. Stop talking about it. Let's do it. Come on, stop talking about it,
So, can I ask you, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Can I ask you, did you shadow him to learn about directing?
I kind of like shadow him, but not really asking for permission to shadow, but just shadowing him in the sense that I'm around him so much. And we've been working on like a Sprite commercial for Kobe Bryant years ago. Then, we did Sweet Blood of Jesus, and we did She's Gotta Have It season 1, season 2, Old Boy with, Sam Jackson and Rami Malek. So I just been watching him and watching him and watching him. And when that thing came about, I was like, you know what? I really want to direct. I have directed theater for a good number of times, but I really wanted to branch into film. So again, every time I would talk to him, he was like, you just got to do it. You just got to do it. As long as, you do it and you do it in an honorable way, just do it. So when I decided that I wanted to do my short film, Time to Surrender, I shot it in 3 days, July 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. And when I was done, I gave him a call and I said, hey, I did it. Yeah. So he's like, come meet me in Brooklyn. And we sat down. He asked me a bunch of questions. How many days, how many pages I shot per day, how many casts, how many locations. And I had all the answers. And he said, you want me to EP it for you? And I was like, oh my God, what I love.
Yes. Tell us, what do you think is the most important thing that you learned from Spike Lee? And can I rephrase that? What's the most important thing that you've learned from Oscar-winning Spike Lee?
Well, one, that you just got to get it done. It's just his own story about getting his first film done and his grandmother helping him, finance it. When you want to tell a story, you got to go and just tell it and not let anything hold you back. But I think what I learned most importantly is how you're going to improvise, because things are going to happen. Yes. When you go out and you scout locations, yes, and you talk to your your props team, something is going to happen. And how do you improvise at that last minute and just get it done? So if a location changes at the last minute, how do you put your thinking cap, or how do you have your thinking cap already on, but switch it and rotate and think about, okay, what would be the next right thing to do?
So tell us, where did you shoot your film?
And I started in Washington Heights. At first I was going to shoot it in LA, because I was in LA when I was doing the development of it.
Yes.
And then I said to myself, you know what? I should just go back home to Washington Heights, because I know that I can probably get some help from the church across the street. I could probably get a few apartments from my neighbors who still live here in the same block. Yeah. And so I went back home and I shot it in Washington Heights.
So you cashed in on them favors?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. The whole
You're like, like I'm shooting this movie and check it out. Like you can, y'all location, you can say that, when my movie blows up, that,
help a brother out.
Help a brother out. Okay.
And it did, everyone came on board. My DP is from New York. I got help from the wardrobe department, Pichelle. She came on board and she's done a bunch of high end and different types of projects. So I was able to go to people that I've worked with already and said, listen, I got this passion project. Can you help me? And they were like, yeah, for sure. They came on board. So it was a very...
So Elvis, tell me, when in your life did you decide, I want to be a filmmaker?
I want to tell stories. I really do. I want to tell stories. I grew up in New York. I grew up, I like to say that the 5 boroughs were my playground. I grew up as a b-boy, breakdancing in the streets.
You did not break dance.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh,
okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead. You seem so deep to me. I can't see you busting a move real quick,
Oh, b-boy was all what we were all about in the late 70s, early 80s. And to be able to grow up in that generation and to be able to have relationships like with Zen One, George Murillo, who is like a graffiti artist that I grew up with. We went to the same school. We would go underground to the tunnels, to the train yards and bomb trains. So I know I have stories and I just want to tell stories and I want to be able to tell them my way. And so what best way to do it than continuing to add on to this world of art through acting, writing, and producing.
All right. Well, look, you're not only a filmmaker, a director. Now you're gonna let us know that you're a break dancer, but you were also an actor as well.
Yes. Yes.
Right. What did you do? Did you work as an actor in Spike Lee's movies?
Yeah. Well, that's how it all started for me. It really started as a dancer. When I got to high school, they didn't have a dance department. The closest thing to the dance department was Theater 101 with Robert Stonebridge. So I said, you know what, let me try this thing called theater. And I completely fell in love with it. I remember my acting teacher giving me the play The Rainmaker and asking me to play Bill Starbuck. And I was like, I ain't playing this role. I'm from the hood, dude. What are you talking about? But it was something that I fell in love with immediately. And then I was blessed to be working early on. You know, my very first film, I Like It Like That, we shot in 1993. And I was able to work with Rita Moreno, John Seda, and Lauren Velez. So I just continue on that journey of, you know, just falling in love with the stage. So I just moved on, and Spike Lee, I auditioned for Spike in 1994, and
so would you call yourself a actor's director, since you know what it's like to be in front of the camera and now going behind the camera, that it was a natural fit for you?
Absolutely, without a question, an actor's director. I really love to work with actors and really try to get them to be as comfortable and but also allow them the space to be to create and to be spontaneous and be comfortable enough to deliver not from a mechanical place, but from a place of the unfulfilled need of the character. So what are you feeling deep down inside, and how can you convey that to me, to the lens, and then later to the audience at large?
So tell us why the subject matter of the life of a veteran became so important to you.
Like I said earlier, just having the news on and constantly hearing Obama talking about the veterans and how much they had this huge backlog that went back to the war, to the Vietnam War, and then wanting to put a story together that I myself can direct, and I myself can be in it. And then from that idea, then I thought about my own brother, who I said is a veteran himself and served 2 tours, one in Afghanistan and one in Iraq. So I was like, okay, I could write a story about 2 brothers. Right. And one brother struggling with coming to peace with the atrocities that he had to deal with in the war. But how can we make it more interesting? Okay, well then and then a part of the research also was that a lot of veterans are easily or can feasibly fall into the addiction world because one, they have the access to medication, prescription medication. So I said, you know what, I'll add that to part of my research. I'll add that to the character, that he's struggling with pain prescription medication. But the surrender part is that all of the things that are going on, the relationship with your brother, the atrocities of war, the abusing the prescription medication, that the enemy truly inside is not all of these other entities, but the fact that you're fighting this war within your own self. So how do you surrender to that?
So that is how you came up with the title of your film, Time to Surrender.
Absolutely.
Right. What are your hopes for your film?
The hopes is that every viewer that watches it can write the final chapter. I don't want to tell people how to feel or what conclusions to come to. I just really want to be able to tell a story, and that story will be my own perspective, my own point of view. But hopefully when you watch it, you can either bring yourself, your experiences, your world, and hopefully it'll make you feel something at the end of the day. Because I just really want people with my work and with my storytelling to be able to spark that emotion inside of you and make you think, and maybe make you go to the VA and maybe bring some charity or some volunteering to the vets.
That's a wonderful message. Now, before we go, I want to know what's next for you.
What's next? That's a good question. I have a few projects in various stages of development.
Okay.
I'm almost done with a book that I've been writing that I'm hoping to turn that book into a television series.
Okay.
I'm producing a sci-fi right now. We're shooting in Philadelphia. And I got my little baby, a feature film, coming of age story set in my neighborhood, Washington Heights, in the 80s.
Wow. Okay, Elvis, you busy. You making it do what it do. I'm
Hey,
so happy to hear that.
I'm trying to follow in your footsteps.
Because you know.
You set the tone.
You can see all of these interviews along with these short films streaming on Fox Soul. My name is Rain Augustine, and thank you so much for joining us right here on News Now from Fox as we bring you these stories and conversations with creators and experts as we celebrate Black History Month.